On this episode, we let you choose what we say next. Welcome to Save Every Universe. My name is Alec Garcia. I'm a powerful Russian AI with a confusing backstory.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. My name is Robbie. I'm a wealthy playboy who moonlights as a vigilante to take back my city and honor my parents' legacy, but is everything I fight for built on a lie?
Yeah, that is easy as it sounds? Or is it?
Yeah, it's as easy as it sounds.
Okay.
But I'm specifically choosing...
From a specific...
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. Who were you last week?
So it was from Missile Command. So I guess I was Missile Commander.
Okay.
I was...
That's a good one.
Yeah, I was basing it off of the old Atari 2600 Missile Command.
It's a good classic reference.
Yeah.
I like it. Nice. And last week I was Anna Bray from Destiny 2. I have more story to tell if only content wasn't making content wasn't so hard. I really wanted more from the new Destiny expansion. They did the same thing with Curse of Osiris. They like kind of set it up in this cool world and you're like, oh, okay, I'm on board, and then it's over.
Yeah.
You know? And I kind of wish there was
felt
a
even
little bit more
shorter,
to
actually,
it. Yeah.
the story.
Yeah, like there was a cool fight and stuff, but it was like they had so much potential there to tell more story, and then they just didn't.
At this point, though, we know they don't tell the story.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't play it for the story.
Yeah, that's true.
So
we got a couple emails from people. So we got a couple people like that gave us feedback on this. In our last episode,
Yeah.
we talked about the update to the Switch, that it now has cloud saves.
Yeah.
And Robbie was saying that he didn't know why that was a big deal.
I mean, I appreciate a little bit, but
Yeah.
I just didn't understand, why there was so much hype about it.
Yeah, and so we had a guy named Pablo write in, and he said, I thought I would write, even though I'm sure you guys get plenty emails about this, and we did get a lot on this one. He said, but the reason the cloud saves are a big deal is because the Switch has no system for backing up saves locally, so if you dropped your Switch and completely broke or bricked it, like how recently the Nyko and other third-party docks were doing to the Switch, you would be out of luck because those saves would most likely not be recovered. So, yeah basically,
That's fair.
It's just it's an insurance policy for all that backup stuff.
Yeah, and I also found out, which I did not know this, even though I own a Switch, you can't transfer it to the SD card, I guess.
Okay, so that was my thought.
I
guess I just assumed that you could do that.
Right,
Just
I
back
assumed
up
you
to
could
that.
too, but
Yeah.
until now, like, there was no way.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's important.
I'm with you. I still think it's a little bit weird that people are like, oh my gosh, finally, this is amazing, as if it was like this feature that they're going to use all the time and whatever.
Yeah.
But I can see it from the peace of mind angle.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not meaningless. And we do live in a time now where we kind of take some of that for granted.
Yeah.
Like backing things up, being able to transfer saves.
Yeah.
And it really, if you think about it, we've been able to do that since, I mean, putting it on a memory card and transferring it, that's
Right.
some old
It really
technology that really should have been
Remember the
doable.
PlayStation 1? You had to put it in the little slot and stuff?
Yeah, if you're
Man,
going
it's
over
just
your buddy's house,
ridiculous.
you're like, I forgot my memory card. Yeah, it was a big deal.
It was, yeah.
And you'd get you had to get bigger ones, and mega memory cards, and so from that
and at this
standard-
point you do just kind of like we said, it's you kind of assume that should be there. It's like one of those nice to haves that it's like, why didn't that exist from the launch?
Yeah, so thank you to everybody who wrote in and talked about that
And guided us in our stupid
our
ways.
ignorance.
And then we got another email from Tony Anderson, who you might remember from our horror episode. And was he in one other one? I don't remember. Anyway, he's from previous episodes.
Yeah, he's been in a couple.
He wrote into us about the Co-op episode, which is a few episodes back now, but he said, I think I could sum up the difference in online versus couch co-op as such, as a roller coaster. Sitting next to your buddy as you climb the giant clackety-clack hill of a monster roller coaster, feeling the nervousness rise, only to have the bottom drop completely out as you whip your way around the killer curves. This is a good little piece of writing. Nice job, dude. Hills and loops and breakneck speed is a thrilling shared experience that you laugh about once it's over. Now, you could have a similar experience on the same roller coaster riding it by yourself while talking to your buddy on the phone, and yes, it would be thrilling and whatnot, but it's not on the same level as being side by side on that ride. I think that's a really good analogy.
Yeah,
actually, that's a good way to capture that.
Right, yeah. There's something about doing that experience together and being side by side that you just, nothing else quite captures.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's, when you're doing it online, it's a little stronger than being on the phone, right? Because they're still kind of going through that experience at the same time. But he's right that there's nothing that really replaces the being side by side.
We talked about in that episode, there's something about the physical place.
Right.
It is a different experience, even like we play Destiny weekly together side by side, even though it's on different TVs. There is something different to being in the same physical spot. And I love that analogy. That's really solid, dude.
Yeah, we're actually going to raid tonight.
Thanks for
side by side. So yeah, thank you, Tony. That's a good example.
Yeah, thanks for sending that in, man. So today we are talking about the release of Detroit Become Human is coming up, the new Quantic Dream game. They made Beyond Two Souls and
Heavy Rain.
Yeah. And so I got kind of excited about this game. I've been watching like all the dev diary stuff. I think it looks really cool. The music's great. The story looks cool.
Yep.
And so I was getting kind of excited about it, and I've been telling people like, oh, go download the free demo. It's really good. And I've had some interesting responses from like multiple sources where they're like, is that the one that's like a movie with buttons or whatever? It's like, I'm not even going to touch it. It's like, you won't even download a free demo to try it for free? Because so I just found it interesting that there are such strong reactions to what qualifies as a game. So I figured today we would talk about, because it's not just Quantic Dream, it's also like Telltale, like our choose your own adventure, heavily narrative based games, are they actually games? Do they qualify as video games? What have you on the docket today, Robbie?
Yeah, I thought I would kind of walk through some of my, like, at least my younger experiences and what, like, and try and capture, like, what it is about choose your own adventure games that's unique and maybe appealing, but also kind of, I think it's a line, right? And not everyone's willing to accept it as a video game. So I thought we should flesh that out a little bit.
So my first thought was like, let's go back to like the definition of what is a video game. And so I Googled it, and it says a game played by electronically manipulating images produced by a computer program on a television screen or other display screen.
Which doesn't tell us a lot.
So, I mean, if you go by just that, you're like, okay, it's a game. But I don't know any gamers who would go by that lifeless of a definition.
Right, especially if you think back to some of our previous episodes about hardcore gamers and all that stuff. That could be anything.
Right.
And we're normally not comfortable with just that, like, general of a definition.
So if you take just the game part then, game, a form of play or sport, especially a competitive one played according to rules and decided by skill, strength, or luck. I think that's where it starts to get sticky, where there's no competition to it. There's no like rules of do these things, get these points, win this thing. It's like those games aren't there, and I think that's where some people fall off with it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. So when I think about choose your own adventure games, when I was doing research for this episode, nobody considered these choose your own adventure games from the past, but did you ever play the old MS-DOS text-based adventure games?
Yeah, and we've talked about these in our history of MMOs, I think.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I thought of, and those were considered computer games.
They were computer games, and when I looked them up, people just call them adventure games. And I guess that's because, if you think about it, they weren't really choose your own adventure because there were still only like one or two outcomes, right? You still like would accidentally fall in a pit and die and have to kind of start over or start back.
But it did give you a sense of agency or whatever. Like you were still making choices, but it wasn't necessarily in a way. We talked about this quite a bit in our MMO episode about how there wasn't like a whole lot of like structured quests, structured outcomes. It was just sort of what you existed in this world and interacted.
Well, and it still kind of reminded me of a choose your own adventure book, at least when I was a kid, right? Because in a choose your own adventure book, even though there's a bunch of different outcomes, there's still kind of a main narrative. Almost all the other threads are just your story getting cut short, right? Which is kind of what has to happen in these types of things.
Or it has a slight branch over and then it hooks back to a main story.
It still hooks back, right? Point. Because there's just, in truth, and even though it's called choose your own adventure, there's still only so much you can really influence. There still has to be some core narrative that's going forward, and the writers just have to be creative about the different branches that still bring you back.
Yeah, and make them feel rewarding to play multiple times or read through multiple times. Yeah.
So, I mean, at its core, the whole choose your own adventure idea is a fiction. It's a fiction we are willing to assume. It's one we either have to like put aside our disbelief, or we have to be deceived by the writers. But at the end of the day, it's still kind of just like those MS-DOS games or like those books we read when we were kids. Right. Which I think is important to kind of keep in mind.
What is your thought on it? Is it a game, or is there not enough of a mechanic competitive element to it that would make it a game, a video game?
So I think
because it's not a movie and it's not a book.
It's not a movie.
You can't put. I mean, it's like things, but it's not. It doesn't actually fit into those categories.
We've talked about this before about like different mediums for storytelling. I think these choose your own adventure games, which right now, if you look it up on Steam, there's a whole bunch. And even though Telltale dominates a lot of like the top 10, there's hundreds, right? Even iOS has like a lot of unique based of these choose your own adventures. I think at the end of the day, this is the closest to a book as far as video games, as close to a book as video games can get.
Right.
That being said, it's really not, right? Because it is interactive, at least the ones I've played. Right. So like the Telltale Batman game, I still have to like punch at the right time, duck at the right time. I mean, it has some reactive stuff in it, even though it's not going to be...
Yeah, some of like the quick time event button stuff.
Even though it's not like to the same level as like a first-person shooter or as reactionary as something like God of War.
Well, but I think even making text choices and knowing it's going going to lead to I think that is a game.
It has to be.
That is a mechanic. So I don't think you can say these are movies just with buttons that are free of game-like mechanics. I don't think they are. I don't think that's true.
Well, they can't be, because if you're reading a book, or especially if you're watching a movie, the only thing you can do is ingest it. You have no way of manipulating that content.
So, yeah, that's a good point. And particularly if you've played the Detroit demo that's for free, that I recommend you go play because it's awesome. But you can play through it multiple ways, and it's one scene. But I was like, okay, I'll play through it one time and just check it out. I just want to see what this is about. And I played it through it, I think, 4 different times, because it was really fun, because the investigation mechanics of it, you could go in and be like, okay, what if I didn't have that piece of information? Then what would happen? And it's interactive on a whole nother level versus like a book, like you're saying.
Right. And it sounds like this developer does things that's pretty deep what they do. Like,
they're kind of the leaders in this. They do like really big, aggressive things. And like you were saying, there has to be sort of a main story thing. I think in this one in particular, it sounds like they pushed even further. Like, you can lose a main character like really early on based on your choices. So it sounds like they're trying to push that art form of, it's not a book, it's something very interactive and your choices matter.
Yeah, I think video games are the only way you could do something like that. If you think about games like Mass Effect or the BioWare games they're not choose your own adventure, but they are so heavily, like, they're supposed to be heavily influenced by your decisions, right?
Yeah, well, and your characters evolve based on your decisions, but it doesn't necessarily steer like the really big plot twisty kind of stuff.
Right. I would say, like, in a game like Mass Effect, which is one of my favorites, I'm not saying this in a bad way, their strength is they can really only change what happens to side characters.
Right.
At the end of the day, you still have to fight the Reapers. It's, you still have to, at the end of the day, everybody still had to choose between 3 endings. Didn't matter how you played through the trilogy. Right. Everyone had to, it came down to those 3 core endings, and then just what happened to the side characters is what changed, which is still cool, and it was still, like, emotional, and it was impactful, but they couldn't really go too far from what I thought was the core Shepard trying to save the galaxy story, right? And I still felt like the Mass Effect series was bolder than any other of the BioWare games in that regard, right? They've tried to do it with their MMOs, but my brother and I still fought the same final boss. It didn't matter if he chose, like, dark side, light side in the Star Wars one. The story was cool, and there were some variants, but at the end of the day, we were still fighting the same boss, still trying to accomplish the same thing. So I think a true choose your own adventure game, I think these are going to continue to evolve, like what's happening in Detroit.
I mean, the work they put into this thing, it really does look amazing. I mean, and I was checking out the Quantic Dream website, and their studio they do motion capture services. So, like, they're innovator. It's almost like they make games kind of on the side, sort of, but they're really innovators of technology and creating more lifelike narratives and bringing that into video games. I mean, it's pretty cool.
It can be weird, I think, though. I remember playing the Heavy Rain demo, and there was this whole elaborate using your inhaler thing, and I remember just being like, oh my god, is this like an inhaler simulator? Like, when you play games, like most games, it's so quick and fast-paced, sort of slow everything down to these micro movements can sometimes feel kind of agonizing. Right. I'm sure they're getting better at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they've gotten flack for that, and I saw a quote from the guy with David Cage. He basically gets a lot of flack for it's not like a white male with a gun shooting things. It's like it's slower, and the tension comes from other sources. Right. And he says there's a lot of people who they just don't want to play that kind of game because they want to play the mainstream popular guns action hero type stuff. And he's like, I'm not going to make that. Yeah. He sort of is a kind of an arrogant person, but I think you would have to be to make something so radically different. Because I do think they do qualify as a game. And I find it interesting, though, that it's not a lot of people's cup of tea, and their response to that is to, like, take that further and be like, not only do I not like it, but it doesn't qualify. You know what I mean? I find that reaction a bit odd.
Yeah. This is the Yanni Laurel thing, right? Where it's like, not only do I not hear what you hear, but I hate you for hearing it.
But you're a moron for thinking you heard that?
Yeah. I can understand people's unwillingness to go that direction, especially if, I mean, maybe that's just not what you get out of video games. But that being said, I think maybe those people also don't like, I mean, like the new Blade Runner. I know this isn't a movie podcast, but, like, I loved it. And then got in arguments with people because they were like, it was so slow, it wasn't fast enough. I liked the tension build.
The slow build,
I liked the slow build. I loved it. I loved the way the music did it. I couldn't get enough of it. But there was plenty of my friends, not you, actually, we agreed on this. Yeah. But I had plenty
Which is weird. We almost never agree on movies.
No, we did agree on this one. Yeah. But Rhino actually was one. We were like, I was like ready to fight him over it.
He was on our PC episode.
Yeah, because he was a big Blade Runner fan of the first
original,
one. Said he hated the second one, and I was so angry about that. But that was, for him, it was a pacing thing. It was a tension thing.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of criticisms of that, but I still thought it was great storytelling.
Yeah. Bringing it back to a video game related example, like The Sims. I've had some choice things to say about The Sims and people who play Sims and those kinds of things. It's really not my cup of tea, but I would never say that The Sims is not a video game or it doesn't qualify or something like that.
Not sober, you wouldn't.
Not sober. Well,
that's true. Have you gotten to play, you've played some of the Telltale games, right?
Yeah, I played, I think the first 2 seasons or whatever of Walking Dead, and I really, really liked them. I loved the relationship and the story with, is it Clementine and whoever the guy was?
I haven't played them yet.
Okay, they did such a good job of telling a really original story, I thought, within that universe.
I followed the development of like Wolves Among Us, and I like was really excited about it. I still haven't played it, but it's like one of those games on my list that I keep being like, oh my god, I haven't gotten around to it. I got it for free on Xbox Live, and then then my Xbox was dying.
Oh yeah.
So like I never got to play it through that. But recently, and I know I mentioned this already on some of our past episodes, but I've been playing through the Batman Telltale games, and those have been phenomenal. Like edge of my seat tension, couldn't believe, I'm like gasping when things happen. So is my wife. We're like really into it.
So is this your first Telltale game that you've really like gotten into? So I think part of the trouble, because I got really into Walking Dead, and then I played a little bit of Batman. I think I played a little bit of the Wolves Among Us or whatever, Wolf Among Us. And I think it's difficult because there's like a high burnout factor. It's not something, for me at least, and it seems to be true for a lot of people, is you can't just play one after the other. Like I can burn through open world games. I can play like 5 in a row and just sink ungodly amounts of time into it. I hit a burnout point faster with it, where it is a little bit more passive than an active, like running around in Far Cry, shooting bears and killing rednecks or whatever.
Sure.
And so it just takes a whole different mindset, and I find it difficult to play, like how you said, like I looked at it but I didn't.
Yeah,
I've heard that many times, and so it's almost like you pick one, for me, once in a while, and really invest and know it's a different thing, and know you're going to digest it differently and move through it differently, and then you're going to go back to Destiny or COD or Battlefield or whatever your fast-paced, pick up the controller, shoot some stuff, put it down kind of thing is.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me, too, because honestly, when we decide to play through it, it's like should we watch Netflix, or do you want to play Batman?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like if I'm in the mood to grind, and I think that's what's prevented me from we're like through, I think we're in the 2nd season or something, just because if I want to go blow shit up, go kick some ass, or go farm, if I'm in a grindy, go try my luck, go loot box, just kidding, I don't get the itch to loot box, but if I'm wanting to grind shit or whatever, I'm never I think I'll fire up a Telltale game, right?
It's a very different itch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's more like, I'm in the mood to indulge in a story.
It's kind of like why you didn't not that you didn't like it, but it's kind of why you didn't play Last of Us as much as I have, right? Because you were like, it's so dark and so emotionally investing. That's kind of what they're built to do, and Quantic Dream even says that in their website description about who they are, and their mission statement is we're here to push the boundaries of what we can do to your emotions with games. And so it's they want to bring a cinematic approach, they want to bring an emotionally involving approach, and they want to suck you in, and that's emotionally exhausting. And so it makes sense that that's a path some people don't want to go down at all, and why it's difficult for even hardcore gamers to go down more than once a year. I think I did Telltale Walking Dead, and I was like, I think I'm good. I get the Telltale thing. I'm going to wait for something else, down the road.
Yeah, but just looking at the availability of these things, there has to be some people out there who, and maybe they don't game other ways, or maybe this is just how they prefer to game. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff out there. So there has to be at least pretty serious customer base that maybe this is all they do. I was surprised how much was available on iOS. I didn't realize this was such a huge genre, just from my ignorance, since this isn't the kind of thing I play. There's a lot of stuff out there on iOS. And on Steam.
Yeah, there is. It is popular. You look at games like Firewatch. Right. I don't think that tends to get lumped in the same category as a Quantic Dream game or a Telltale game. But it's kind of the same thing. It's this thing on rails. It happens to be FPS. You have a little bit more mobility and freedom in the world and stuff, but it's basically the same thing. It's a story with choose your text and that kind of stuff. It's very similar. And so I do think it is popular, and I do think that there is a niche for it. There's people who say that Firewatch and the stuff from that studio is the best thing ever. I'm excited about their new one showing at E3 actually.
Oh yeah? So what do you think about these games from a writer's perspective? I know you dabbled on you did a cool little text-based game that was kind of like the MS-DOS games we're talking about actually. Yeah. And I know you had talked to me a little bit about how difficult it was to keep all those threads together. Right. So this has got to be tough to do a proper choose your own adventure game.
It blows my mind. You didn't play through the demo, right, for Detroit?
No.
So even for the one scene that they give you to play, right? Like you go through it and it'll show you the path that you took, and then it'll have like grayed out all the other stuff, all the other paths that you didn't take.
Oh, okay.
And then you play through it a couple times, and it'll fill up the stuff that you have done still. And I played through it 4 times, and I still had choices that I didn't go through.
And it's not that long, right?
No, it's really short. So to do that with 3 main characters across a whole game, that's why I'm interested in this game. It's such an unbelievably daunting task to write all of that dialogue, all those possible chains, all those possible kill points, and then what happens to the rest of the game after that main character is gone. And it's mind-blowing, man. It is so much work.
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, I don't know if you can on Dragon Age, you can bring up a banner that talks about all your decisions through all the different games and kind of shows a similar thing. Yeah. And like, I remember going through that when they launched it and like looking at the other paths, being like, I didn't even know that was a thing, or I wouldn't even have guessed that was significant. Yeah. And like, it kind of made me want to go back and play through stuff and unlock new things and see how stuff played out, because it blew my mind. I mean, and they went through the 3 games that were out. I had to like go look shit up on the Wikipedia, be like, wait, I let some guy die? I don't even know who that guy was. Right. Some of it had been because I've been playing these games over the course of years. Yeah. But even if stuff hadn't affected it now, they had clearly written it in a way where it could continue to down the line. So
and isn't that like amazing that those writers are creating these chains that probably 80% of the player base won't even see. Right. They're putting in the work to create all these possibilities, and most players don't even see it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's like really impressive. Yeah. Super dedicated.
So I mean, I get that it's not for everybody. But for me, that's like the writing aspect of it. The imagining of all those possibilities is what draws me to it, because the scope of it is just breathtaking. It's so big.
Did the Walking Dead Telltale game do the same? At the end of each Batman chapter, it breaks down how many people.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah,
it blew
great,
my mind. I loved that part.
And it kind of drew you to go back and play, because it's like, okay, my gut instinct is shared by 70% of the population that played this. Yeah, maybe I want to go back and do what's counter to my gut and see how that unfolds then and stuff. I love that. Is a cool game mechanic, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
exploring possibilities.
It's kind of cool because you couldn't have done that without the internet or whatever. Right. And I don't know if there's a privacy issue here, but that thought occurred to me. But I personally thought it was really cool. Like, I would make a decision that I thought was I bet nobody did that, and then it'd be 90% people. And
you kind of feel proud though a little bit when you did do one, and it was 17% of people. And you're like, that's right.
That's right.
I made the hard choice.
Yeah, I think going forward from here, I think this is going to continue to be a thing, because I think this is one of the most. This is the only way you can do this type of storytelling, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what we said about video games anyway, right? But there's no other medium that you could straddle that line of having such a deep writing perspective and engage and ingest and digest and interact with everything,
and interact and have real agency and have real choice and get the cinematic visuals on top of it. No other thing combines all of that together.
And even though I think some of that is a fiction to a point, it's getting less and less so. And as long as people are willing to pay and studios are going to develop these things, these storylines can become so much richer and not have to adhere to those core storylines. That fiction is going to become less and less of the foundation, I think, in these choose your own adventure games.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I would agree with that. But the one thing I would add is that you look at something like God of War or The Last of Us, right? Yeah. It's incredibly linear, but you get to fight things. Right. I think the scope of choice that these games give you plays more to an advantage that only games can do, more so than any other story heavy game. So to that point, I would say that they are more taking advantage of video games as a medium with those types of choices.
As far as storytelling goes.
Yeah, not only would I argue that they are a game, to the people who say they don't, that in some ways they're more of a game than a lot of other things by giving you so much agency compared to a completely linear narrative.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I certainly think they take advantage of the unique aspects of gaming in a way that any other linear game can't do. So yeah, I think that's a good point.
Thank you for listening to Save Every Universe. If you enjoyed this episode, please go give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Google, or I guess on our Facebook page.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any feedback, want to talk to us about whether or not you think this is real gaming, or let us know what some of your favorite choose your own adventure games are.
Yeah, and are you going to buy Detroit? It seems very divisive.
Yeah, let us know. You can reach us at Save Every Universe, and that's Save SAVE Every EVERY.
Two E's together.
Two E's together. Save Every Universe
at gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
These drinks were poured by a carpetbagger.